What is going on, guys? Craig1287 here, bringing you some Battlefield 3 gameplay. Just going to be having that in the background. Going to be having another discussion about some Battlefield 4 stuff. This is kind of a less formal thing that was done. IGN had a little community, send in your questions, and they had about 2,500 comments. And one of the IGN staff members went and picked out some of the common occurring questions and things like that, and just kind of posed the questions to one of the most well-known staff members there at DICE, and that is Lars Gustavsson. I probably butchered that. Gustavsson, something like that. And so yeah, there's a lot of these questions were things that we've already had somewhat confirmed, or they've kind of been mentioned in some of the interviews that they've done at Gamescom and things like that. But again, it's always nice to have confirmations, and on some of these, they just kind of gave a little bit more details. I will have the link to the IGN article down below in the description, but just going to go through these things kind of real quick, touch on some of the ones that I think stand out a little more than the others. So let's get through it. And again, these are all just questions that some of the community asked. So it's a pretty good read. It's 2 pages if you want to go read it yourself. But if you don't have the time, let's get through it real quick. All right, will Battlefield 4 have bot support? Pretty much, he says no. If you want things like that, go to the single player. Otherwise, no. They kind of asked, is it something they're working on in the background? He says kind of something along the lines of, who knows for the future. I doubt we'll see it in Battlefield 4. Ever since they've introduced single-player aspects of the game, I really don't see why there's too much a point to having bot mode, but I guess people do want it. And we are going to be getting something somewhat close to that, and we'll get to that here in a bit. Actually, let's just go ahead and get right to it. It's the next question. They ask about vehicles in dealing with helicopters and jets specifically that that players felt they were daunting to control. And so they ask, is there going to be a tutorial? I could have sworn that this was already confirmed quite a bit back. Maybe it wasn't confirmed and it was just an interview in which they said that they were working on it, but it has now been officially confirmed. Lars said, yeah, we've heard all the complaints and things like that, so there is going to be a sort of practice range in which you can try out the vehicles, specifically the helicopter and jets. And he also did confirm, not in this article, but outside of this, we have had it confirmed that there's going to be 2 different flight ceilings for jets and then for helicopters. So jets are going to be able to go higher in the map than helicopters are. So that, again, not part of the article. Just wanted to toss that out there, let you guys know that. Now, there's a mention of the dinosaur mode. He says, it's actually really interesting what he says. He says that, we've heard of it, so who knows? It definitely sounds extremely sexy, and sounds like something that would fit the Battlefield universe very well. I don't know how that fits the Battlefield universe. Maybe Bad Company, since they already had a mode where there was a wave fights, and they actually mentioned that here later in a second in the interview. But they've had that, and the Bad Company series itself was a more comical side for the single player. But Battlefield's never been a very comedic game that has. I mean, they've got those Easter eggs and things like that, but I don't know. That was just kind of weird, stuck out to me, where they said it would fit the universe very well, which maybe he's just referring to the fact that they've already got those dinosaur Easter eggs. I guess that's now part of the Battlefield universe. And then he asks, is it something you're working on? And he says, confirms, no, not right now. They're focusing just on the core Battlefield 4 experience. Then there's some questions on the Vita and the connection between the Vita and the PlayStation 4. Not really going to talk too much about that because it doesn't interest me all that much. However, they do ask about the PS Vita being integrated with Commander Mode, which is actually pretty interesting. I think that people that have that are playing Commander Mode on a tablet are actually going to be, I don't know, I want to say more type like a hardcore gamer than or anything like that. But whatever, it doesn't matter because he says no, there's no plans to bring the Commander mode support to the PS Vita. So sadly, no. Now, moving on, will Battlefield 4 have split screen? Obviously, as a PC player, this is not that big a thing. Not that it matters because he says no. So even consoles, no split screen support. It's just way too much physics and 64 player. There's just too many things that I'm guessing that's the same reason why it's not going to be in Battlefield 4. Is it would just be way too much for consoles to have to render all these things twice. So we're not going to be seeing that. And then they do go on to talk about how they're leading the charge with second screen functionality, which is kind of what they talked about earlier with the Commander mode and things like that, how you'll have tablet support with that, and also Battle Log, in that you can use a tablet to get onto Battle Log and have a full screened map of your server and things like that. I'm still iffy on that. I'm a little sketchy on how that's going to be utilized, but I mean, it's nothing that'll be game breaking, but it'll surely give people out there quite the edge. Yeah, getting better hardware gives you a better frame rate and better looking graphics, but that's just very, very slight. Something like having a constant full screen map, that's a little too much maybe, who knows. But so yeah, they talk a bit about the dual functionality between having two different screens and things like that. So pretty good info there. Not too many shockingly new bits and pieces. He does ask about hardcore mode and a very simple, straightforward answer of yes. So can't really discuss that much. Moving on, and I guess I can say, me personally, I've never been too much into hardcore mode. I can dedicate an entire video as to my opinions on hardcore mode and why I'm not a fan of it. Especially, I just dislike it being called hardcore mode because it kind of generates this mentality that if you're not playing it, then you're not hardcore. So that kind of bothers me. But I can, if you guys want, I could get an hour-long video talking about hardcore mode, but I could get some 10-minute video out about that. Moving on, will you be able to utilize civilian vehicles to get around the city? Now, this was an interesting question, but what first popped into my mind was the thought of having like one or two civilian vehicles, but then I figured out, they're talking about all the vehicles that are scattered about in the map that are civilian vehicles, hopping into, obviously, those that are completely destroyed you wouldn't be able to drive, but the thought of having a bunch of these things, and then I was like, oh yeah, I actually don't want that. And that's nice and reaffirming, because what he explains is that no civilian vehicles are going to be used. We want to focus on just the military style vehicles, so you don't have to worry about jihad Camrys or whatever the civilian vehicles would be scattered about. Now, like I said, they did reference the Onslaught mode that was seen in Battlefield Bad Company 2, and they asked about how, bringing Onslaught mode to Battlefield 4 and having AI-controlled troops and vehicles and all that good stuff. And it's actually really interesting because Lars, I don't know if you guys know, but Lars, he has actually been a part of DICE since the early days of 1942. He worked on that, and so this guy has been involved with every single Battlefield game, and it was an interesting little bit. He says, thank you, I worked hard on that one, so it's nice to see that's one of the specific projects that he worked on. And he said that it was a really fun project, but then says, not at launch, so we won't be seeing Onslaught mode at launch. He says, right now we're focusing on this, but I'm happy to hear that people enjoyed Onslaught mode, so who knows for the future. So we might see it in one of the DLC packs that we get, one of the expansions, but it will not be at launch. Then it goes on to ask about day-night cycles and night vision, and he kind of confirms what we've already heard in certain interviews, saying that they don't want day-night cycles, dynamic day-night cycles, to be occurring in the maps just because of balance with lighting, how things will change. Obviously, we'll see things like the Levolution with like Parasol Storm, and how that will slightly get darker, but it's not exactly pitch black where you have to have night vision and flashlights to see. Though he does comment that Parasol Storm, when the storm hits, that you will see somewhat of an advantage if you use your IR scopes, but I mean, from the footage we've seen from Gamescom and things like that, I don't really think it's that dark maybe the rain can get kind of intense. Obviously the game can change, but as it stands right now, I don't think IR will be really that great an advantage from that storm. So that's just me personally. But he did confirm no day-night dynamic cycles on the maps. That's been reaffirmed. This one was a good little bit. Nice to reaffirm this. Actually confirm. I think there was a lot of errors out there with how this was being handled. Will you lose bullets remaining in the magazine on reload? You know, we saw this at E3. They kind of came out and said that that'll be a feature of hardcore. And that what was at E3 was a mixture of the two modes, but he straight up says, no, we've gone with the Battlefield 3 system. So, yeah, I don't think we'll even see the ammo loss on reload, early reloads, even in hardcore, because he does just straight up say no. Let's see, he talks about the way the rockets and ammo in general for helicopters is handled. We've pretty much already seen that, how they slowly regenerate their ammo reserves. They talk about the naval warfare and things like that. And it's actually pretty interesting the way that he approached the mindset of that, how in Battlefield 1942 it came down to whoever shot first would be the winner for the boats. But now with Battlefield 4, because of the wave system, you know, that adds in a whole lot more difficulty. With those waves, you're going to be missing a lot of shots, so it's not technically who shoots first wins. And I'm really glad to hear that, because you know, any added level of skill is always nice. And then they also talk about this doesn't really have any practical effect, but you know, why they still use certain helicopters even though modern day military uses more advanced, more modern helicopters. And it's you guys can read that if you want. Again, there's no real practical effects. So they do mention the Osprey. I think that would actually be a pretty cool thing to have a VTOL in Battlefield, but sadly he does not confirm or deny that that will be in there. I highly doubt it will be in there. So yeah, that's about it. Go and check it out, guys. You know, if you want to read all the in-depths, but I just kind of went through and covered all the highlights. Link again is in the description below, and there's just so much content still coming out about this game. I'm having troubles churning out videos fast enough to keep up with it. I don't want to release stuff when it's, you know, days behind, but I really want to make sure that I get as much out there that I'm coming across, so that you guys can get all this information. So again, you know, hope you've enjoyed the video. Leave any comments, questions, requests that you might have in the comments section below. Hope you've enjoyed the commentary in addition to the gameplay. Have a good one. Ta-ta.